Well, I had no idea when I prayed that prayer that I was actually making myself available for ministry. But, sometimes God doesn't show us everything, does he, Pat? Because we'd run the other direction.
There is a side of Christian television that viewers rarely see. You see the smiling hosts and the powerful sermons, but no one noticed that behind all of that, Joni Lam was quietly dying. Her body was breaking in ways the cameras refused to show. Her own son was being pushed out of the family entirely. Now, Joni Lamb's daughter has broken her silence. And what she reveals suggests there may have been far more happening behind the scenes than anyone realized. The daughter who finally spoke. For years, the world watched Joni Lam walk onto the Daystar set with a calm smile and a steady voice. What the world did not see was a woman whose body had been quietly failing her for months. And for years, her family kept that pain locked behind the studio walls. That silence finally broke on Mother's Day of 2026, just a few days after Joni's passing, when her eldest daughter, Rachel Lamb Brown, decided she could not stay quiet any longer. Rachel posted a video on her Instagram page that millions of believers would end up reading and rereading in tears. She opened with the kind of honesty most public figures never allow themselves. She wrote that there were no words for the depth of grief she was carrying. She wrote that her mother had been the heart of their family, and that she did not know what life was supposed to look like without her in it. And then she said the sentence that stopped the Christian internet cold. She wrote that even when her mother's body was weak, her spirit never was, and that through the journey of being sick, Joni never lost sight of the mission God had called her to. But here is the part that made it hit so much harder. Rachel revealed a moment from her mother's final weeks that almost nobody had heard before. Right before one of Joni's procedures, as the doctors were preparing the anesthesia, Joni looked up at her physician and asked him if he died today. Would he know where he would spend eternity? Rachel says that the doctor rededicated his life to the Lord right there in the hospital room. Imagine being that sick and still thinking about someone else's soul before your own surgery. Rachel also shared a small moment from her own home that broke her in half. She came through the door one afternoon and her young son Judah ran up to her, hugged her legs, and told her he had missed her. In that ordinary instant, Rachel realized she would never again get to run to her own mother and say those same words. That is the kind of grief no broadcast can prepare you for. But what Rachel carefully left out of that beautiful tribute is what was actually happening to her mother's body in those final months. The body that was breaking. Here is what we now know about Joni's final months, and a lot of it never made it into a single Daystar broadcast. On the 6th of April of 2026, just a few weeks before her death, her husband, Doug Weiss, told the Ministry Now audience that Joni had recently injured her back. He said she was healing from 2 hairline fractures on her spine. That was the official line. That was the version the partners were given. But longtime viewers had already started noticing things. Some had been writing in for weeks, asking if Joni was okay. They mentioned weight gain that did not match her usual frame. They mentioned visible swelling around her face and hands. Some thought her speech sounded slightly slowed in certain segments. None of it was ever addressed on air. Joni and the network simply kept producing television as if nothing was wrong. According to investigative reporting from the Trinity Foundation and Julie Roys at the Roys Report, the situation behind closed doors was far more serious than 2 spinal fractures. There is a reported claim, traced back to a family member talking at a private gathering, that Joni had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. That claim has never been officially confirmed by Daystar, and the network has only said that prior to her back injury, Joni was facing serious health matters she had chosen to handle privately. So we hold that claim with care. But the pattern itself is undeniable. Something was very wrong, and almost nobody outside the inner circle knew the full picture. What stings about this part of the story is the choice she made with that knowledge. While her own body was breaking, Joni kept hosting. She kept showing up at the table. She kept singing with the Daystar singers. She kept reaching for the camera and pointing people to Jesus. Her daughter would later describe it as living mission-minded right to the very end. Other people might describe it as a woman protecting an institution at the cost of her own healing. Both descriptions can be true at the same time, and that is part of what makes this story so hard to sit with. And in those quiet final months, Joni was also preparing for an ending that one of her own children was never going to be invited into. The phone that never rang. On the 7th of May of 2026, Joni Lam passed away at her home in Texas at the age of 65. Daystar released a careful, polished statement saying she had graduated to heaven and had been reunited with her late husband, Marcus. The tributes started rolling in within hours. Pastors, politicians, and ministry leaders flooded their social pages with photos and prayers. From the outside, it looked like a family unified in grief. But here is what the Daystar statement did not mention. Joni's own son, Joni Lam, was never called to her bedside. He was not invited to be there in those final hours. His wife, Joni Lam, later confirmed it publicly. She wrote on the platform formerly known as Twitter that they had not been informed of anything, that they had literally been down the road from where Joni was, and that nobody from the family had given them a single call to say goodbye. She added that they had chosen to forgive anyway. And this is where it gets harder to read. Jonathan, the eldest child of Joni and Marcus Lam, the son who had once been publicly named by his own father as the future head of Daystar, did not even learn that his mother had died from a family member. According to reporting from Julie Roys, he was informed by a longtime Daystar board attorney named Tom Callender. That is how the founder of a billion-dollar Christian television empire told her own son she was gone. She told him through a lawyer. The funeral was held on the 18th of May of 2026 at Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas. It was led by Pastor Jentezan Franklin and featured video tributes from former President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and others. Music came from Nicole C. Mullen. Daughters Rachel and Rebecca spoke from the stage. The whole thing was broadcast and watched by millions of people around the world. But if you knew where to look, the truth was sitting in the front row. Jonathan and Susie were placed on the far right side, deliberately hidden from the cameras and separated from the rest of the Lam family. Jonathan was the only one of Joni's 3 children who did not speak from the stage that day. And after the service, according to Julie Roys, no one from the Lam family ever invited Jonathan to his own mother's burial. So if you have been wondering how it could possibly get this broken between a mother and her firstborn son, the answer goes back several years and centers on one very small child. How a family got this broken. To understand what happened to the Lam family, you have to go back to November of 2020. According to reporting from the Roys report, Jonathan and Susie Lamb's 5-year-old daughter disclosed to her mother that she had been touched inappropriately by a family member. Susie Lam has stated publicly that when she went to Joni with this information, Joni urged her not to go to the police. Joni allegedly suggested that Susie bring the child to her instead, and that after a one-on-one meeting between Joni and the little girl, the child reportedly shut down and would not speak about it again. Joni denied this account in full, both publicly and privately, for the rest of her life. Then came August of 2021. The extended family was on a retreat at a beach property in Florida. According to Susie, Jonathan walked into a bedroom and found a male family member, referred to in the original reporting only as Pete, alone with their naked daughter. Joni's version of the event described it as an innocent moment, saying the child had simply been changing while Pete looked out the window. holding his own infant son. Susie's version told a very different story. For more than 4 years, the identity of Pete remained a mystery to the public. Then, on the 3rd of November of 2025, the Roy's report finally published the name. According to that reporting, Pete is Joshua Brown. That is Rachel Lamb Brown's husband. He has denied every single allegation in detail and on the record. He told the Roy's report that he had never touched the child inappropriately in any way ever, and that he was now living a nightmare. He even reported a death threat to the FBI. The Colleyville Police Department in Tarrant County, Texas, opened a formal investigation and closed it in May of 2025 without filing a single charge. They cited insufficient evidence, the absence of a formal outcry from the child, and stated they had obtained no evidence of a crime. Susie has publicly noted that this is not the same thing as Pete being exonerated. Daystar has stated that Josh Brown voluntarily took and passed 2 polygraph examinations, though polygraphs are scientifically unreliable and not admissible in any court. So that is what is on the public record. 2 sides, deeply opposed, with a small child is sitting in the middle of all of it. But the moment that turned a private family pain into a national public scandal happened in a meeting that nobody knew was being recorded. The Voice of God. In July of 2023, Joni Lam arranged a meeting at her own home. She invited Jonathan, Susie, and a well-known pastor named Jimmy Evans, who runs a ministry called XO Marriage. The stated purpose of the meeting was to bring resolution to the growing tension inside the family. What Joni did not know was that her son Jonathan had decided to record the entire conversation on his phone. That audio recording would later go public and reach more than 500,000 listens. It is, without question, the most damaging piece of evidence in this entire story. On the recording, Jimmy Evans can be heard telling Jonathan something that almost nobody in the modern church ever says out loud. He told Jonathan that his mother Joni was, in his words, the voice of God to him. He told Jonathan that the only acceptable options were to submit or to leave. He said that staying and disagreeing was not on the table. That single phrase, the voice of God to you, became the line that exposed the entire dynamic. Critics like Julie Roys and authors who study spiritual abuse have pointed to this audio as one of the clearest examples of the covering doctrine being weaponized to silence a victim's family. The idea is simple and dangerous. The spiritual authority of the parent or the leader becomes treated as equal to the voice of God himself. To question them is to question him. To leave is to fall under judgment. After that meeting, Susie was effectively pushed out of her role at the network. Then, in November of 2024, Jonathan himself was fired from Daystar. The network said it was the result of a 15-month review and his failure to meet a performance improvement plan that included a clause barring him from social media commentary. Jonathan said it was because he refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement that would have buried the allegations forever. But behind all of this drama was something even bigger that almost no one outside the watchdog community has ever fully understood: the empire behind the smile. Here is something most loyal Daystar viewers have never been told. The legal entity that owns Daystar is a Georgia-based nonprofit called Word of God Fellowship. Because it is classified as a church under federal tax law, it does not file a public IRS Form 990. It is not a member of the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. There is essentially no public window into how the money flows in or out of the building. What we do know is striking. Marcus Lamb once told an audience that Daystar had been appraised at over $1 billion. Reporting from the Trinity Foundation and Ministry Watch puts the network's annual revenue at over $100 million with nearly 300 employees. The financial watchdog group Ministry. Watch has given Daystar 0 stars for financial efficiency. They have given the network an F grade for transparency. They have issued a public withhold giving recommendation for donors. The controversies stretch back years. During the pandemic, Word of God Fellowship received a Paycheck Protection Program loan of just under $4 million to retain 303 employees. Around that same window, the family acquired a private Gulfstream 5 jet valued between $8 and $10 million, which was reportedly used for family vacations. The loan was repaid only after investigative reporter Lisa Guerrero of Inside Edition ambushed Marcus Lamb outside a country club in South Lake. Unsealed documents revealed that between the years of 2002 and 2011, Word of God Fellowship paid Marcus and Joni more than $1.5 million in clergy housing allowances. In her final year, Joni Lam personally owned 7 properties across 4 states, with a combined value of nearly $12 million, including a beach condo in Florida and a home in Colleyville. She sold 3 of those homes and moved 4 others into a personal trust before her death. There were other concerns too. Reporting from the Roy's report stated that Joni and her second husband, the psychologist Doug Weiss, took a Cabo San Lucas honeymoon in 2023 that allegedly cost the network roughly $100,000. Joni publicly denied that any ministry money was used. A board member reportedly moved to gift her the money to cover it. So this is the foundation Rachel's beautiful Mother's Day tribute is actually sitting on top of. And it is the reason one enormous question now hangs over the entire ministry. The question every Daystar partner is quietly asking is the same one the watchdog community is asking out loud. Who runs the empire now? What do Rachel's words really mean? Joni told her audience in her final year that she had pre-installed an unnamed executive leadership team. Marcus had once stated in writing that the line of succession should pass to Joni and then to their son, Jonathan. That son is no longer welcome inside the building. The board is small, private, and unnamed. The names being quietly floated include Rachel Lamb Brown herself, the Chief Financial Officer Arnold Torres, and possibly an outside Chief Executive search. At the funeral on the 18th of May, Pastor Jentizen Franklin eulogized Joni with a phrase that has stuck with everyone who heard it. He called her a velvet brick. He said she was the kindest, sweetest, most loving person you could ever know. But if you wanted a fight, she was a fighter too. He declared that Daystar would be more anointed than it had ever been before. And he said that only God knew the whole story. That last line is where the human and the institutional finally meet, because both things are true at the same time. Rachel's grief is genuine. The doctor she described, the one her dying mother led to rededication moments before surgery, that moment is real. The son sitting in the front row, hidden from the cameras, never invited to the burial. That situation is also real. The little girl whose disclosure started a 5-year war inside one of the largest Christian networks on earth, she is real too, and she is still a child. What Rachel said at the memorial may be the most honest summary anyone in this family has offered yet. She said that if her mother taught them anything, it was that the most beautiful lives are not perfect ones. They are surrendered ones. That sentence is doing an enormous amount of work in a very small space. It admits that the life being honored was not perfect. It reframes the imperfections as part of a story that still belonged to God. Some people will hear that as grace. Other people will hear it as a careful way of not addressing the harder questions that still hang in the air. The truth this story leaves us with is uncomfortable but worth saying out loud. Sometimes the people who spend their entire lives pointing others toward the light end up carrying their own shadows almost completely alone. Joni Lamb pointed millions of people to her faith. The The people closest to her are still trying to figure out what the rest of her story actually was. That is what Rachel finally said, and what so many in the family still have not. Share your honest thoughts in the comments because every voice in this conversation matters.